चैप्टर 3 सेलिब्रेटेड केसेस ऑफ मेमोरी। पहले इस चैप्टर से जो मैंने सीखा है उसके नोट्स मैंने बनाए हुए हैं, वो मैं आपके साथ शेयर करूंगी हिंदी में। उसके बाद मैं ये चैप्टर रीड करूंगी इंग्लिश में, वो आप हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन, हिंदी अंडरस्टैंडिंग के बाद आराम से सुन सकते हैं। ठीक है, सो लेट्स स्टार्ट। इस चैप्टर से जो ऑथर कुछ ऐसे लोगों के एग्जाम्पल्स दे रहे हैं जिनकी मेमोरी बहुत ही ज़बरदस्त थी। ये एग्जाम्पल्स हमें दिखाते हैं कि इंसान अपनी मेमोरी को कितना डेवलप कर सकता है। ये नॉर्मल डेली लाइफ के एग्जाम्पल्स नहीं है बल्कि एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी केसेस हैं। पुराने भारत में धार्मिक ग्रंथों को लिखा नहीं जाता था। गुरु अपने स्टूडेंट्स को सुनाकर याद करवाते थे और वही ज्ञान पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी चलता रहा। आज भी कुछ लोग बहुत बड़े बड़े धार्मिक ग्रंथ वर्ड टू वर्ड सुना सकते हैं। ऑथर बताता है कि पाणिनि की जो संस्कृत ग्रामर, जो बाइबल जितनी बड़ी मानी जाती है, कई सदियों तक सिर्फ याद करके ही आगे बढ़ाई गई है। कुछ ब्राह्मण ऐसे भी थे जो पूरी महाभारत को याद रखते थे और जब चाहे सुना सकते थे। महाभारत में 3 लाख से भी ज्यादा श्लोक हैं। दुनिया के कई हिस्सों में लोगों ने लंबी लंबी कहानियां और कविताएं याद रखी हैं। कई लोग बाइबल के पूरे चैप्टर्स और वर्सेस भी याद से सुना देते हैं। एक पुराने राजा मिथ्रिडेट्स के बारे में कहा जाता है कि उसे अपनी सेना के हर सिपाही का नाम याद था और वो 22 भाषाओं में बात कर सकते थे। कैरमेज नाम का एक व्यक्ति था जो अपनी लाइब्रेरी की हर किताब का कंटेंट याद से बता देता था। रोमन वक्ता हॉर्टेसियस की मेमोरी इतनी तेज थी कि वो बिना नोट्स के अपने ओपोनेंट की पूरी बात एग्जैक्ट वर्ड्स में याद रख लेता था। सेनेका नाम के व्यक्ति हजारों नाम याद कर लेते थे। सिर्फ याद ही नहीं बल्कि उन्हें उल्टे ऑर्डर में भी बोल सकते थे। उसने एक बार कई 100 लोगों की बातें और कविताएं सुनाकर उन्हें बिल्कुल सही क्रम में और फिर रिवर्स ऑर्डर में सुना दिया। कहा जाता है कि जब पुरानी हिब्रू स्क्रिप्चर्स की कॉपीज नष्ट हो गई थीं, तब एस्ट्रास नाम का प्रीस्ट ने उन्हें मेमोरी से दोबारा लिखवा दिया। कुछ मुस्लिम स्कॉलर्स पूरा कुरान एक एक शब्द के साथ याद से सुना सकते हैं। इंग्लिश पोएट बेन जॉनसन के बारे में भी कहा जाता है कि उन्हें अपनी सारी लिखी हुई रचनाएं याद थी। फेडोसोवा नाम की एक रशियन महिला 70 साल की उम्र के बाद भी 25,000 से ज्यादा कविताएं, गीत और कहानियां याद से सुना सकती थी। ब्लाइंड ग्लिक नाम का एक स्कॉटिश व्यक्ति बाइबल के किसी भी हिस्से को तुरंत सुना देता था। क्लार्क नाम का एक आदमी अमेरिका के हर इलेक्शन के वोट रिजल्ट्स और कई शहरों की पॉपुलेशन याद रखता था। क्लार्क शेक्सपियर के नाटकों को घंटों तक याद से सुना सकता था। वो ग्रीक भाषा में पूरी इलाइद सुना देता था। एक डच आदमी के बारे में कहा जाता है कि वो अखबार एक बार पढ़कर उसका पूरा कंटेंट शब्द शब्द याद से सुना देता था। कभी कभी तो वो अखबार को उल्टे क्रम में भी सुना देता था। एक इंग्लिश एक्टर और एक लंदन वेटर ने भी ऐसे ही कारनामे किए। उन्होंने पूरा न्यूज़पेपर याद करके सही सही सुना दिए। क्रिश्चियन मैनेकेन नाम का बच्चा 4 साल की उम्र से ही पूरी बाइबल, 200 भजन और 5000 लैटिन वर्ड्स याद कर चुका था। उसकी मेमोरी इतनी तेज थी कि जो भी उसे पढ़कर सुनाया जाता था वो उसे याद कर लेता था। लेकिन उसका केस नॉर्मल नहीं माना गया और उसकी मौत तो कम उम्र में ही हो गई थी। ब्रिटिश थिंकर जॉन स्टुअर्ट मिल ने 3 साल की उम्र में ग्रीक सीख ली थी और 8 साल की उम्र तक कई मशहूर इतिहासकार की किताबें याद कर ली थी। एक इटालियन एक्टर को अगर किसी कविता की कोई भी लाइन दे दी जाए तो उसे उसके बाद की 100 लाइन्स तुरंत सुना देता था। ऑथर बताता है कि कुछ लोग पूरी किताबें वर्ड टू वर्ड याद कर लेते हैं, जिनमें पंचुएशन मार्क्स भी शामिल होते हैं। एक ब्रिटिश क्लर्जीमैन लंदन की सड़क पर चलते हुए दोनों तरफ की दुकान दुकान के बोर्ड देखकर उन्हें याद कर लेता था और बाद में सही ऑर्डर में या रिवर्स ऑर्डर में भी सुना देता था। एक हिस्टोरियन ने एक ऑफिस की जल चुकी किताब सिर्फ मेमोरी के दम पर दोबारा लिख दी। बोटेनिस्ट ऐसा ग्रे को 10,000 पौधों के नाम याद थे। मिल्टन को लगभग 20,000 शब्द की वोकैबुलरी याद थी। फ्लोरेंस की एक लाइब्रेरी के लाइब्रेरियन को लाइब्रेरी की हर किताब की एग्जैक्ट लोकेशन याद थी। उसे लगभग 2,50,000 किताबों की जानकारी याद थी। ऑथर कहता है कि मेमोरी सिर्फ मशहूर लोगों में ही नहीं होती, लाइब्रेरियंस, फैक्ट्री वर्कर्स, पुलिस ऑफिसर, लॉयर्स और एक्ट्रेस भी अपने काम के हिसाब से बहुत पावरफुल मेमोरी डेवलप कर सकते हैं। आज के ज़माने में भी छोटी दुकानों के कुछ एम्प्लॉयज़ हज़ारों प्रोडक्ट्स के नाम और प्राइजेस याद रखते हैं। ऑथर का फाइनल मैसेज ये है, ऐसी ज़बरदस्त मेमोरी पुराने समय से आज तक देखी गई है। ये सिर्फ जीनियस लोगों की प्रॉपर्टी नहीं है। ज़्यादातर केसेस में ये मेमोरी प्रैक्टिस, पेशेंस, मेहनत और सही टेक्निक से डेवलप हुई है। इसीलिए कोई भी इंसान अपनी मेमोरी को बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग बना सकता है। इस चैप्टर का मेन लेसन ये है कि इंसान की मेमोरी की कोई फिक्स लिमिट नहीं होती। दुनिया में ऐसे लोग हुए हैं जिन्होंने पूरी किताबें, महाकाव्य और हजारों नाम याद रखे, लेकिन ऑथर कहते हैं कि ये कोई जादुई गिफ्ट नहीं है। प्रैक्टिस, पेशेंस और लगातार ट्रेनिंग से कोई भी अपनी मेमोरी को पहले से कई गुना ज्यादा पावरफुल बना सकता है। 3 Celebrated cases of memory. In order that you may appreciate the marvelous extent of development possible to the memory, here are some examples of a number of celebrated cases, past and present. These are exceptional and not necessary in everyday life. They are presented merely to show to what wonderful extent development along these lines is possible. In India, in the past, the sacred books were committed to memory and handed down from teacher to student for ages. And even today, it is no uncommon thing for the student to be able to repeat word for word some voluminous religious work equal in extent to the New Testament. For example, the entire text and glossary of Panini's Sanskrit grammar, equal in extent to the entire Bible, were handed down orally for several centuries before being committed to writing. There are Brahmins today who have committed to memory and who can repeat at will the entire collection of religious poems known as Mahabharata, consisting of over 3 lakh shlokas or verses. There have been minstrels from ancient times until the present day who have learned by heart with remarkable accuracy immensely long epic poems. This has also been found among Algonquin Indians, whose sages or mythic legends are interminable and yet are committed word by word accurately. Many people have memorized all or parts of the Bible and can repeat from memory any verse or chapter called for in the whole scripture. It is related that Mithridates, the ancient warrior king, who knew the name of every soldier in his great army and conversed fluently in 22 dialects. Pliny relates that Cremides would repeat the contents of every book in his large library. Hortensius, the Roman orator, had a remarkable memory that enabled him to retain and collect the exact words of his opponent's argument without making a single notation. On a wager, he attended a great auction sale which lasted over an entire day and then called off in their proper order every object sold, the name of its purchaser, and the price thereof. Seneca is said to have acquired the ability to memorize several thousand proper names and to repeat them in order in which they had been given him, and also to reverse the order and call off the list backward. He also accomplished the feat of listening to several hundred persons, each of whom gave him a verse, memorizing the same as they proceeded, and then repeating them word for word in the exact order of their delivery, and then reversing the process with complete success. It is said that the Hebrew scriptures were saved by the Hebrew priest Esdras, for when the Chaldeans destroyed the manuscripts, Esdras was able to repeat them word by word to the scribes, who then reproduced them. Some Muslim scholars are able to repeat the entire text of the Quran letter perfect. Ben Jonson, the English poet, is said to have been able to repeat all of his own work from memory with the greatest ease. Great memory was not limited to famous people. Fedosova, a Russian peasant, could repeat over 25,000 poems, folk songs, legends, fairy tales, war stories, etc. When she was over 70 years of age, the celebrated blind Glick, an aged Scottish beggar, could repeat any verse in the Bible called for, as well as the entire text of all the chapters and books. In modern times, the newspaper contained the accounts of a man named Clark who lived in New York City. He is said to have been able to give the exact presidential vote in each state of the Union since the first election. He could give the population in every town of any size in the world, either present or in the past, providing there was a record of the same. He could quote from Shakespeare for hours at a time, beginning at any given point in any play. He could recite the entire text of the Iliad in the original Greek. All students of memory know the historical case of the unnamed Dutchman who is said to have been able to take up a fresh newspaper to read it all through, including the advertisement, and then to repeat its contents word to word for word from beginning to end. On one occasion, he is said to have heaped wonder upon wonder by repeating the contents of the paper backward, beginning with the last word and ending with the first. An English actor is said to have duplicated this feat using a large London paper and including the market quotations reports of the debates in Parliament, the railroad timetables, and the advertisements. A London waiter is said to have performed a similar feat on a wager by memorizing and correctly repeating the contents of an 8-page paper. One of the most remarkable instances of extraordinary memory known to history is that of the child Christian Mencken. When less than 4 years of age, he could repeat the entire Bible 200 hymns, 5,000 Latin words, and much uh, ecclesiastical history, theory, dogmas, arguments, and an encyclopedic quantity of theological literature. He is said to have practically retained every word that was read to him. His case was abnormal and he died at an early age. John Stuart Mill, the British economist, is said to have acquired at the age of 3 years a fair knowledge of Greek and to have memorized Hume, Gibbon, and other historians at the age of 8. Shortly after, he mastered and memorized Herodotus, Xenophon, some of Socrates, and 6 of Plato's dialogues. A young Italian actor was able to perform the feat of repeating 100 lines from any of the 4 great Indian poets, providing provided he was given a line at random from their works. His 100 lines following immediately after the given line. Of course, the feat required the memorizing of the entire works of those poets and the ability to take up the repetition from any given point, the latter feature being as remarkable as the former. There have been cases there have been cases of printers being able to repeat word for word books of which they had set the type. A British clergyman is said to have been able to walk down a long London street reading the names of the signs on both sides and then recalling them in order in which they had been seen and then by reversing the order. There are many cases on record of persons who memorized the words of every known tongue of civilization as well as a great number of dialects, languages and tongues of savage races. A well-known historian was once employed in a government office, the records of which were destroyed. He thereupon restored the entire contents of the book of records which he had written, all forms in his memory. The botanist Agar knew the names of 10,000 plants. Milton had a vocabulary of 20,000 words and Shakespeare one of 25,000. Magliabechi, the librarian of Florence, is said to have known the location of every volume in the large library of which he was in charge, and the complete list of works along certain lines in all the other great libraries. He once claimed that he was able to repeat titles of over a half million of books in many languages and upon many subjects. He nearly every he nearly sorry in nearly every walk of life there are persons with memories wonderfully developed along the lines of their particular occupation. Librarians possess this faculty to an unusual degree. Skilled workers in the finer lines of manufacture also manifest a wonderful memory for the tiny parts of the manufactured article, etc. There are bank officers who have a wonderful memory for names and faces. Some lawyers are able to recall cases quoted in the authorities years after they have read them. Perhaps the most common and yet the most remarkable instances of memorizing in one's daily work are to be found in the cases of the the- uh, theatrical profession. In some cases, members of stock companies must not only be able to repeat the lines of the play they are engaged in acting at the time, but also the one that they are rehearsing for the following week, and possibly the one for the second week. And in repertoire companies, the actors are required to be letter perfect in a dozen or more plays. Surely a wonderful feat, and yet one so common that no notice is given to it. In most retail stores today, barcodes identify and tell you the prices of articles that are sold, yet it is not uncommon for stores employees of say a small stores whose cash registers are not computerized to know the price of every item in the store even when they change daily. In some of the celebrated cases, the degree of recollection manifested in undoubtedly abnormal. But in the majority of the cases, it may be seen that the result has been obtained only by the use of natural methods and persistent exercise. That wonderful memory may be acquired by anyone who will devote to the task patience. Time and work is a fact generally acknowledged by all the students of the subject. It is not a gift, but something to be won by effort and work along scientific lines. Key points of this chapter are fabulous memories have been reported from ancient times and continue today. They are not limited to geniuses or people with inborn talent, and it is manifested in people at all strata of society. Anybody with the desire to acquire this skill can do by following the principles to be discussed in the forthcoming chapters.